being here. Get involved with helping the Chicago Public Library think about how to design the space along with the research that Diana was mentioning that happened in phase 1. So it was really exciting to help get involved in the project on that level. I think we did a fun job with them. We got to work with Nicole. So with that.
So I'm going to talk a bit about the design process, how we took in what the library needed. Sorry? Oh, I'm Corey from the ETC. I'm part of the design team. We also have other members, Harmon Pollock, EJ Lee, and Michael Lewis, and Madhuri Kaushik is in the back. And we had 2 other members of the team. Drew was our advisor, as well as Jesse Schell, new advisor at the ETC. So we took in what the library needed, what MacArthur wanted, what Digital Youth Network needed in terms of space. We put that into our design process for the space. So what we're going to do is talk about how that kind of coalesced into.
Would you mind speaking up?
Speak up, yeah. So we have some slides, and we called ourselves CPL001. So that was our team name. What we created was that became U-Media, the U-Media space for teens at the Chicago Public Library. Okay, quick overview of what we're going to talk about, the 4 of us up here. This is the space at the opening. You'll see the evolution of how it got to be looking like this. And that's some art on the wall created by the students that are using the space. So our goal from the beginning, to design a multimedia, multi-purpose space for teenagers at the Chicago Public Library. That's what we were given. That's the task and challenge we were given from the very beginning. And to do this, we had to think about how do we develop a space for teens that involves digital media and also involves all the resources that the library has in general. So we wanted to kind of create a sense of lifetime learning so that the teens knew that the library was there for them. It kind of spoke to them on their level, their language, but also had resources maybe beyond what they were going to use at that age they would continue to use. So that was part of the challenge. The other part of the challenge was how do you mix media with the human element? Because that's such a huge factor of the success of U-Media, the mentors, the librarians. We didn't want the media to overshadow the human element. So we had to incorporate all of that into our thinking about space. So our approach, we had kind of a 3-fold approach. Taylor mentioned, and Diana mentioned Mimi Ito. She talked about hang out, mess around, and geek out as 3 activities that teens do. I'm not going to go too much into that because I think a lot of you at this conference have been hearing about that. We partnered with Chicago Scenic Studios. They did the build out and gave us some design help. They had this analogy of the paddler, swimmer, and the diver. So it's a way of talking about levels of immersion. Paddlers stay on the surface of the water. Swimmers get a little deeper into the water. Divers are all the way immersed. So we were thinking about this as we designed the space in terms of we want to accommodate all 3, but hopefully eventually make every individual go through all 3 steps. So a paddler would hopefully someday become a diver. And then from the ETC, we deal a lot with storytelling. We deal with experience design. So we went back to Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And what we really wanted to see was a sense of every person who stepped into the space be the protagonist of their own story. So we thought of the space as a miniature hero's journey. And Michael's going to walk through the space in a few minutes, but just to give you a sense, there's a sense in Joseph Campbell of the threshold, that you have an ordinary space, and then a threshold, and then an extraordinary space. We wanted the U-Media Center to be this extraordinary space that people would walk into, and it would immediately be different, immediately be special. Also, we deal every day with multidisciplinary media and collaboration, and that's a lot of what the mentors and librarians are doing with the teens in the space, so our backgrounds fit pretty well. So Harmon's going to talk about how the project evolved through the semester.
Hey, Corey. So I want to start telling you kind of how we went about designing the space before we show you through it. First of all, we started with kind of a broad overview. We were like, we want to design the space so it becomes something for the teens. And the way we started that is designing without any constraints. No consideration about budget, nothing about aesthetic design. We really wanted to show, like, how can we make this space unique for the teens and the library. So this is kind of some concept art, some stairs and some pods, kind of very out there and outlandish. You know, some a couple of different layouts, a place where they can hang their backpacks. and really outlandish kind of designs for aesthetics, and lots of ceiling tiles, things that aren't necessarily needed for a library, but would add a sense of uniqueness and really make the teenagers like appreciate the space, feel like it was for them. And then we had to bring this down. We had to bring this down to a manageable level. The money was involved, but we began considering things that the teenagers needed. They needed. We have this row of LCDs and pictures, and that was a way for us, a unique way to show that they could bring their the work they presented out into the space in a unique and fun fashion. And unfortunately, we can't do everything, and so we had to come back to more traditional specs, a sofa and couch. But we also focused on flare designs and design elements that really showed that it's still not just an institutional library that teenagers are used to, but something different, other than what they know. And so this is just kind of samples of what we end up using. So to get to that point, we iterated a lot. We first started out with hand sketches that allowed us to move quickly through lots of different ideas, lots of different elements that we thought we can't incorporate, but we try anyway. And this was really helpful for getting lots of ideas. But eventually, we had to narrow down ideas into one particular iteration, and we developed that into a virtual model. We used AutoCAD and SolidWorks, and it was really allowed us to visualize the space for ourselves, but also gave something we can provide to the library and new media, and get them a sense for like what it's going to look like, so they can have a better understanding of what we're working on. And it was a really effective communication tool. And then our third prong for kind of developing the space was we did a physical model. And one of the constraints the library gave to us is they want it to be a flexible space where they can move things around. And using a virtual model is fairly complicated. It takes a lot of time to do that. So we decided to build a physical model. We can put chairs and Lego people in there. And it was a really great way for us to iterate on how flexible the space can be. And in the end, we ended up painting it, and it gave us a good idea of what the colors in the space are going to look like. So right now, Michael is going to talk you through the space.
Thanks, Harmon. So, from Harmon, you have a sense of how we came about making the space. I'm going to walk you through our floor plan. Here's our final floor plan that we submitted for development that's in use now. And what I want to walk you through is how we incorporated the hero's journey and the paddler, swimmer, diver, and the hangout, mess around, and geek out. So our first aspect is the entrance. It's very important. We have students, we want to take them from the ordinary world. They're coming in downtown Chicago off the city street, and when they enter the door, we want it to be a place that they know it's their own. They have to cross the ordinary world into the extraordinary world. Lots of colors, they need to, when they walk in, they have to see displays with their work, video games, all these things. So we made sure that at the entrance, it wasn't cluttered. There's line of sight into the entire space, so that we could start drawing their eye down it and enticing them into the story that will unfold for them. Once they entered the library, the first space that was right there was the hangout area. This is the most comfortable space we envisioned for the teenagers, where they can go, they can bring food in from the outside, which is very unique for a library. We talked a lot with the library, made sure that this was important. Teenagers after school wanting something to do. This space was for that. It had couches. This is where we put the video games. We had a staged out area where they could do performances. And just a very social environment where they could just be themselves and not have to worry about adult supervision, like judging them for what they're doing. They can just be themselves. With that in mind, we also felt the need to put a satellite hangout area in the space so that once they got deeper into it, they had a space where they could still retreat to quickly so they could socialize. So we put another little comfortable area in the space with couches and chairs so that even as if immersed, they still have a place to hang out. Once they've become more comfortable with the space, the next place we envision them moving through, you'll see it's a circular movement through the space, is the mess around area. This is where they can check out laptops from the library and start exploring Facebook and showing the digital media that other students have made in the space and exploring what they can do and talking that through. It's still a social area, but more focused on the creation of digital media. It's where they can also, once they've hit maybe the limits of what they could create on their own coming into the space, they can engage a mentor and ask them, what can you help me